questions. They seem like they should be fairly straightforward, right? If you need, for example, clarification about something, so you just ask. Well, not so fast. Effectively asking questions involves something more. It involves a little more thought and consideration than simply speaking anything that comes to your mind. And yes, there are a few common traps that managers fall into when it comes to asking questions to employees. And these mistakes make it much harder to get a clear answer. My name is Kamila Ludwikowska, and in this video, I'm going to focus on 10 common mistakes that managers do when asking questions. I will tell you also how to avoid them by giving examples with practical solutions. So let's start. Trap number 1. Closed questions. Actually, most people will answer the occasional closed question as if it were open. However, too many closed questions in a row shuts people down. If you catch yourself asking a closed question before you have finished asking, pause before you finish and ask it again. You will know a closed question because it can be answered with a simple answer yes or no. For example, is there a way to do that? Could there be any other way to approach that? Do you have any other options? Solution. First, become aware of what you are asking and then convert closed question to open question. If you find that you are asking closed-ended questions, use a very quick technique to correct it and reformulate the question. And that quick technique is simply starting with what or how. Examples. What are the other ways to do that? How else could you approach that? What other options do you see? Trap number 2. Questions suggesting solutions. A special type of closed-ended questions, these are questions that suggest solution. And these types of questions are actually advice with a question mark added at the end. Managers want to offer an employee a ready answer, providing the advice in the form of a question. Examples. Shouldn't you ask your boss first before you do that? Don't you think that pricing this person will produce better results? Should you, could you, will you, don't you, can you, are you? If the second word in the question is you, then you are in trouble. So what is the solution for that? Trust your curiosity. The point here is to go back to the thing that interested you and to ask about that. Often, that will involve broadening your suggestion question to an open-ended question with multiple answers. So the first question which I mentioned earlier concerned wondering what are the channels of authority in the organization, and it was, shouldn't you ask your boss first before you do that? So instead you might ask, in your company, what kind of channels do you need to go through before you act on this? Now notice how this question allows for other answers than just talking to the boss. Trap number 3, searching for the perfect question. One of the greatest obstacles faced by managers is the search for a question that will open up the misery of the universe to an employee. In such situations, each question is preceded by a long, awkward silence while you search your mind for the most appropriate wording. It totally disrupts the natural flow of the conversation. So what is the solution? Trust the process. It is not a perfect question that is the key to success, because manager's role is to help employee to think a little further ahead through your question than he or she is able to do on her own. So ask a question like, you mentioned that. Tell me more about this. What else? Trap number 4. asking more than one question at a time. It sounds obvious, but how many times have you thought that you were asking one question, but it ended up in a very long sentence? I remember such moments from my experience. So, what is the solution? Think first and then speak. Figure out about what you want to say before you start talking. Allow yourself a moment of silence before you will formulate next question. Ask the question and then stop. Allow some so-called thinking time and see what responses are coming up. Trap number 5. Interpretive questions. Sometimes by asking a question, we impose our own interpretation on another person. For example, imagine employee saying, "Lately, I've had a hard time getting up on Monday mornings. I'm frustrated with the current project. I don't have enough support and time." Now, manager saying, "How long have you hated your job?" A question like that will certainly trigger the employee's reaction like that. Wait a minute, I didn't say I hate my job. So what is the solution for that? Make a habit of incorporating your employee's words into your questions. So in that situations which I just mentioned, described, you may ask, "How long have you been frustrated with the current project? What kind of support would you need? What makes you look at the clock and want the day to be over?" You can see that in each example, I used exactly the words that employee was saying before. Trap number 6, rhetorical questions. Rhetorical questions, although asked as a question, are in fact statements. Often these statements are emotional and judgmental. That is the manager's opinion about a given situation. For example, "Are you really gonna ruin your career like that?" Since we are not really asking the other person's opinion, but questions formulated lead to an answer or even provoke a defensive reaction. Rhetorical questions mean that you have made a judgment or made up your mind about the conversation. What is the solution? Change your attitude. Eliminate what's going on inside you and find out why the situation makes you defensive. You can also a kind of renew the inner conviction of employees' potential and abilities. You can spend 15 to 20 minutes on this reflection, on reflective questions, just to reorient yourself about your employee. And these reflection questions may be like that. Why am I forming judgments here? How is focusing on the negative in this person meeting my own needs? What can I do about that? What potential, ability, and wisdom do I see in this person? What can he, she become? Why am I drawn to teach him, her? Trap number 7, leading questions. Leading questions suggest a certain answer. That is the answer that you as manager expect to hear because you already have that in your mind. You may even not notice that you are trying to steer the conversation towards the right answer in the leading question. Now, what do you think that manager expects to answer to the following question? How would you describe the feeling discouragement? Do you want to stay in this organization where you have invested so much? Solution: giving several possibilities and a technique, or may also otherwise. If you catch yourself asked a leading question, you can save it frequently by offering a few more options, and that will be quite easy. If you take up a new position, will it take away your family time and energy? And now, add at the end of this phrase or and ask the opposite question. Can it open the door to spending time with your family in the way that you want? So now you see that there are more options. So it's not leading to just the one that you already have in your mind. What makes these two techniques so useful is that you only need to change the very end of the question. You can realize that by asking a leading question midway through and still change it on the fly without employees ever knowing what happened. Trap number 8, interrupting too rare. Not having a kind of courage to interrupt your employee and put the conversation on the right track, that is a big problem. Even bigger than interrupting too often. Some employees are able to answer a 10-minute reply every time you ask an open-ended question. Too many irrelevant details in the conversation slow down that conversation and actually make it difficult to get a clear picture of the situation. So the solution? Back to the subject. Part of your job as manager is also to manage the conversation. So when you see that your employee is talking too much, interject with a question that brings back to the focus. For example, it caught my attention when you mentioned earlier that. Let's come back to that. Now trap number 9, interrupting. For some managers, interrupting others, that is a habit they even don't realize. It is even often believed that interrupters are really bad to talk because they actually show disrespect to others and cause even irritation. So what is the solution? Count to 2. 23, 24. Of course, count mentally during a conversation after an employee has finished speaking before answering or asking a question. If your employee starts talking again within 2 seconds, that is really great. And the last trap. Number 10. Question why. The why question usually causes the employee to withdraw into himself because his motives have been questions. When you ask questions like, why did you do this? You actually encourage your employee to defend and justify their actions. So don't be surprised if they will become defensive. What is the solution? Use what questions. It is quite easy to replace why with what, and some examples of why questions which are changed to what so as not to lead the employee to become defensive. Why did you give up this job? It's better to ask, what made you reject this job? Another example, why do you think he will answer you like that? It's better to ask, what makes you expect such a response? I presented you 10 mistakes, 10 traps that managers do when talking with employees. Now, evaluate your own asking proficiency with these 10 top question mistakes. Good luck.